quorum. Can we pull Stephanie up on the screen?
She'll have to turn her camera on.
Oh, she has to turn her camera on to be on the screen.
Yeah.
Okay, and Stephanie, and if I don't know that you have the ability to do that, but I believe if you want to speak and use the raise your hand feature, I'll be able to see you on the screen I'm sharing with Tyler. So
Okay.
that was my concern, is to be able to acknowledge her.
All right. Thank you.
Again, it being 6 o'clock and we do have our recording started, I will call to order the August 1st Planning Commission meeting. If you would please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. We welcome everyone to this evening's meeting, and we will do introductions for the people present and the people that may be viewing us on Zoom, or people that will be looking at the meeting at a later time. And Annette, let's start with you.
Hello, I'm Annette Stewart.
Okay.
I'm Annette Stewart.
She's a Planning Commission member. I'm Beck Ashby. I am a Planning Commission member and chair of the Planning Commission.
Tyler McCloskey, Planning Commissioner.
And Jim, we'll go just on over to you and do those present.
Jim Fisk, Senior Planner, City of Port Orchard.
Nick Bond, Community Development Director for the City of Port Orchard.
Connor Dahlquist, Planning Intern.
Josie Rademacher, Assistant Planner.
Stephanie Bailey, Planning Commissioner.
Joe Morrison, Planning Commissioner.
Jackie Krukoff, the Planning Permit Clerk.
Thank you. Okay, with that, the first agenda item that we always have is public comment. So if there's anyone in the audience this evening that wishes to address the Planning Commission, now would be the appropriate time to do that. And when you step to the podium, be sure and speak into the microphone. That's the only way we can record your testimony. And if you would please give us your name and perhaps spell your last name so we get it in the record correctly. And I have one raised online. Should we do the online one first? We'll go ahead and do the online comment first, and then we'll do for Joe and Stephanie, you can't see, but we have maybe a half a dozen, 7, 8 people in the audience this evening. So with that, Josie will bring our guest over into the meeting, and then they will be allowed to give testimony.
All right, good evening. My name is Meadow Jaime. I appreciate the time this afternoon, or actually, I guess this evening. I was just curious if anyone, and this might not be the appropriate forum, but I was curious about the overall process about submitting a written request for speed bumps on public roads. I did see online that there's a request where you would need to submit a written request to the Public Works Department, but I was just curious, beyond that, there's not additional information in regards to a timeline or if there's a traffic study needed or additional support from neighbors. So I was just curious if there could be some just general information shared in regards to that.
Okay, Meadow, could you provide us, can she do it in the chat feature with contact information? Because that is data that the Planning Commission typically would not address.
Okay.
We don't have that information, but we sure can get someone to get that information to you. But it appears as though Mr. Bond wanted to say something.
Yeah, I'm happy to take down your information and have somebody from the Public Works Department contact you, or you can email the Public Works Department at their general email address, and it will be typically they will take that up and potentially bring it to the Transportation Committee for discussion if it's something that can be justified. But you'd want to reach out to Public Works for that. But I'd be happy to facilitate an introduction for you.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Meta. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak? Thank you.
Differential problem. My name is Carolyn Andrade, CAROLYN ANDRADE. I live at 900 Mitchell. We have a 5,000 square foot orthodontist office going in across the street, 34 parking spaces. Next to, you have Kitsap High School, you have the district offices, you have the open land where the orthodontist is going to go in and the parking. Wonderful, everybody needs an orthodontist. However, we have an almost 100-foot redwood tree that seems to be on the chopping block. And we need it. I live at the low income housing. We need the tree for so many reasons. I mean, the deer might still go, but we need the shade. We need the oxygen. And after the semi fiasco of working on that tower, we need assurances that you're going to do dust control. And I mean dust control, not a little flower pot that he was watering. I need a truck. I need to know the runoff's okay. I need to know what you're going to do about the traffic problem because it's a parking lot at the high school. A little farther down, about 300 yards, they're putting in an apartment complex. So we're adding over 200 people within this little block, let alone the orthodontist's office. We're all low income, ill seniors. We need to know that the soil's not toxic. Have you had tests done? Because there were houses there. Who knows what they done? We need traffic control. We need dust control. We need warning. I haven't had a TV since June 16th. Wave doesn't know why. Nobody knows why I'm still paying for it. They think the tower wiped it out. You're going to have to redo all the sewer, take down the telephone lines, widen Taylor. And I want assurances that this is going to be done in a timely, organized manner, and you're accounting for all the extra traffic, the runoff from this dirt, once you have the soil, because you're going to have to grade it, you're going to have to cut it, you're going to have to widen Taylor. It's going to be at least a 6-month project that puts us into February. And we haven't gotten anything. When you pull up the plan, the schematics, which are, I'm using that loosely, show that you're keeping the redwood tree. So there's probably about 40 trees that are going to come down. And that is going to impact our little climate also. We have 3 deer that live there, as long as he's mellow with the deer coming over. We have the bunny rabbits, the geese, the falcons that nest there. So this is my concern. This is going to affect my health, my lifestyle, my well-being. The traffic's ridiculous. And where is all the runoff and the soil? And I want that tree to stay there. And that's what I got to say.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I had failed to mention when we started the public comment that we do limit the testimony to 3 minutes. So is there anyone else that would care to speak this evening?
I have to read it. I want to thank you for providing an opportunity to speak. Miracles happen not in opposition to
Before you start reading, could you give us your name?
Oh, okay. My name is Claudette, Desjardin. Okay. Miracles happen not in opposition to nature, but in opposition to what we know of nature, St. Augustine. I am going to attempt to do the impossible. I'm going to speak on behalf of a tree, which doesn't speak our language, nor we speak theirs, but communicate in its own way when one is in its presence. Jane Goodall has a good book on about the communication of trees. It's called Seeds of Hope. And you can get an audio or book form, and there are other readings too, but this one I specifically like to recommend. She's an awesome person. I have a copy of 298 signatures giving a voice to the non-removal of a healthy tree, along with pictures exhibiting its beauty. It reads as such. The below signatures come from the people of our community and friends who wish that the elder, meaning older, not an elder tree, I think it's an elder redwood tree remain uncut from the neighborhood of 791 Mitchell Avenue. This is an act of caring only. Coming from diverse awareness of the inhabitants who are cognizant that a tree is a being that provides oxygen, shade, biodiversity, beauty, etc., which add to its being there. It is a part of history. They've been here longer than most of us. And this one, maybe not so much, but trees were here before we were. At least that's what they teach us in school. It has science, biology, chemistry, helps with climate change, spirituality, religion, or not, to mention a few, just like each of us. Young people are included if they wish so. Copies will be given to the city and the builder. Thank you. I have this is a copy. I also have pictures of the tree because I'm sure that with busy schedules and stuff, people won't even be able to get to see it. So
You
I
can,
have three
can-
pictures of it, plus some of the other surrounding come on now.
Vegetation.
Thank you. Vegetation such as a maple tree in spring and fall, wisteria, lilac, and some cherry blossoms.
you can give that documentation to Josie at
Okay,
the
thank
end there,
you.
and she will put it in our record.
Who is that? Thank you. We have also sent this to the owner of the property, also the same information. This collection was canvassed by foot. I wish you could have been there to experience the general enthusiasm during the conversations, the exchange of individual experiences, and what the individuals offer to the community, and some perspectives on their expectations from the city. Some of the walks of life consist of police work, fire, postal, teaching, realty, forestry, store management and owners, government workers, gardening, medical, to name a few, of which I was aware. There is a combination of retirees, students, and the next generation, along with various races and ethnicities. One lady explained she teaches language to middle school students who come from both Russia and the Ukraine. I'm not going to go into the particulars, but it can be an interesting faction since those two are not exactly friends. The police person has a redwood on property. A Dutch Bali gentleman has 2 children stationed in Poland. The postal worker wished for me to give the city council some of his expectations, as he was concerned with his sailor's mouth in certain predicaments. And naturally, an exchange of awareness is passed during conversation. One teacher indicated the clearing of the school district where the employment was. Another signee indicated that Wood Street off of Mile Hill is also having some issues with removal by a salmon creek. I think the indigenous people are on the right path. They practice and know how everything is integrated. No one person can do it all, but each can carry their share of responsibility. This planet, helping this planet to be healthy. The trees and us, we breathe each other. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there someone else who would like to speak? Before you begin, I want to make sure Stephanie and Joe and Dave, can you hear the speakers adequately? Okay, perfect. Thank you. That's why it's important to speak into the microphone, is because our commissioners who are attending remote, sometimes the audio is lacking for them. So if you speak into the microphone, they can hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
My name's Lucinda Barp, and I live at 900 Mitchell Avenue as well. And I'm here because of the redwood tree. And I feel grateful that I have an opportunity to speak for a tree, and particularly this tree, because of its beauty and strength and the solace that I have felt standing below it. And I mean, it's just sheer beauty. So I want to, start my my 3 minutes by saying that reading a Margaret Mead quote, where she says, "Take heart. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." So in that way, I mean, I took heart. I just needed like some kind of like boost with this. I talked to Nick last year. I talked to the tree, and because I had a feeling that there was going to be development. I also have had contact with Johnson Link Orthodontics and sent them an email with pictures of the tree and also copies of screenshots, because I've got kind of a crude admin system going, and sent them pictures of the signatures and an appeal about the tree. And I got a really positive response from them today, which was so heartening. Because you and they are really stewards of this piece of environment that's in front of us, and they will bear most of the burden of cost if the tree is retained, which I think it will be. But they said that they would take it under consideration. The tone of the email was really positive, and I was just so excited about that. I do want to say that I and somebody else, Claudia, both have had talks with foresters, a forester in her case and an arborist in mine. I've consulted with one who said that the tree is healthy and it's likely 90 to 100 years old. And the base of the tree, I don't have a tape to go all the way around it, but I noticed that it's got 3 trunks that brace one another like this. As you look up into it, it's just amazing. I've never seen anything like it. And so let me see if there's anything else that I feel like I haven't said. In terms of the Taylor buckling, what I've read by arborists is that this is not a result of the redwood. It's a result of the clay and water expands and less. So with the proper drainage, this could work. So I'm just hoping that that Johnson Link comes to you and says, "Here's what we'd like to do to help us figure this out." So with that, I'm going to end with this small. I came across this reading. There's some synchronicity to this. It's called The Greenland's Tale. There are early myths that speak of the first tree, a prehistoric giant that covered over the landscape with iron black bark and foliage so thick that light barely penetrated it. When the tree finally succumbed to the elements and there was nothing left of its once formidable trunk. There grew within the earth a vast network of roots and arteries that fed every bush and blade of grass. No longer separate entities, but one single interconnected organism watched over by the green man, a steward whose sacred job it was to prevent mankind in its infinite clumsiness from damaging nature's core. So anyway, my appeal to you all, and it's good to see some of you. Thanks.
Thank you. I will invite anyone else who wishes to speak to step forward. We thank you for your comments and you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. I'm not sure at this point. I just have a question for Nick. Is this project signed up there?
Yes, there's a notice of application, and we did discover that there's an inconsistency between the drawing that's in their conditional use permit application and the drawing that's in their land disturbing activity permit application. And so we've asked the applicant to clarify, among other things, whether the tree is remaining or whether it's being removed. And so we're waiting for a resubmittal, but ultimately this goes to the hearing examiner for approval, not to the planning commission. And so it will be considered under our code that is in place.
Right. Did you all hear that? This is when we have land use actions like this, they do not come before the planning commission or the city council. They go to a hearing examiner. And I believe testimony is also taken at the hearing when the hearing examiner schedules the meeting or the hearing. And the neighborhood are they noticed on that?
They are. There will be a separate public hearing notice that goes out once we schedule the hearing, but we're still in the early stages of reviewing the application.
Okay.
And in order to have comments on the record for the permit file, you need to submit written comments to the city and reference the application number that's on the notice of application, or provide testimony in the public hearing.
Okay. Did everyone hear that? Okay. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Roland Manglona, last name Manglona. I live across the street, pretty adjacent, 400 feet from the tree. There is 3 trees that exist in it. You know, they're all strong. It would take 6 of us to wrap our hands around that tree. It's over 100 years old. And my curiosity is that if the tree is taken down, is that going to be taxpayers' money paying for it? Because obviously it's strapped between power lines. There's going to be the road being stopped, which is right next to the high school. And at 7 o'clock in the morning, the high school is very busy on that road. Parents picking their children up, given the circumstances of our nature of our world. You know, we pick up our children nowadays. We don't allow them to go on buses anymore, as much as we don't. But so I'm just curious, in the planning commission, the gentleman just said there's a discrepancy on their planning for that property. So I'm just curious, who's going to pay for the traffic, the flaggers, the equipment, taking down the power lines? Is that going to be our taxpayers' money that are going to be paying for that? I'm just asking,
right.
just out of
And this
curiosity.
is just right. And what I want to say is we're here to listen to your testimony. We don't answer questions. Okay. We listen to your testimony and it goes in the record. Mr. Bond just let us know that there were inconsistencies with the initial application and a second application or drawings, and that he's seeking clarification on that. And again, just so that everyone in the audience is aware, neither the city council nor the planning commission is part of this decision-making process. This will all be handled by the hearing examiner. You are welcome to testify at the hearing examiner. You are welcome to send the city written comments that they will give to the hearing examiner. And there will be public notice of when the hearing when the public hearing is actually scheduled. So no, we don't take second comments. So
You don't receive any of that.
what I would suggest you do is you can go on the city website, and someone may need to help me with this, but you can go on the city website and sign up for all the city notices, and it will be emailed to you. Yeah, because I'm a citizen just like you guys, and I live in the neighborhood also. Yeah, get on the notification list and you're going to get a whole bunch of stuff you don't care about, but that's okay. You will also get the things you do care about, and that's what's important. And if you need help with that, please call our city clerk's office and talk to Brandy, Wallace, or Janine Floyd, and they will help you getting those things set up.
And
Okay.
And if you go to the city's website, at the very bottom of the website on any page, there's a contact, subscribe, and connect. The subscribe is where you can put your email address, and then you check the boxes of what information you'd like to receive.
Yeah. And we do appreciate your interest in the city. We appreciate you coming in, giving us information and how important this issue is to you. So thank you very much. Mhm. Yes, our pleasure. It's good to see all of you. Okay, moving down our agenda, we would like to approve the minutes from our June 6th meeting. Joe, is there someone who would like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the June 6th meeting?
I would be happy to do so, Beck. I would make a motion to approve the June 6, 2023 meeting minutes as written.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Is there anyone who would be voting in opposition to approval of the minutes? Dave, you have your hand raised. Okay.
He's muted.
You're muted if you,
Sorry about that. I did abstain from one of the votes, but I think it said that it was unanimous.
it did say it was unanimous and then it said you abstained.
Right.
So is that in conflict, and do we want to amend the minutes so that they say the number of, I'm looking for it.
That was the way that it was spoken to during the meeting. But if changes need to be made to better address the process.
Yeah, I think it passed by unanimous consent, and then Mr. Bernstein asked to be recorded as an abstention after the
Right.
fact.
I think it's recorded as to what actually happened. It was voted, or because we use the unanimous consent rule, we did that, and then you asked to have the record show that you abstained from voting. Does that meet your needs, Dave, or would you like it reworded?
Well, that is how it happened. But if there's an abstention, it's not a unanimous vote.
So they should be changed.
So we can change that. Do we have wording to change it to? Or is the commission wanting to see that that change and brought back to our next meeting for approval?
Shouldn't they just be changed to what they should be?
It appears from the minutes that 6 of you were present, and so we
So
can
we
change
get
it to
to-
5-1,
Yes,
or five in favor and 1 abstention.
that is correct.
That would be more accurate.
Okay, thank you. Does that change meet with the acceptance of our motion maker and our second?
It does.
Yes.
And I'd be happy to recall the motion if you care for me to do so, Beck.
No, I think what we'll do is just amend the motion as to read that the vote was 5-0 with 1 abstention.
Sounds good.
Okay, and that meets with the approval of our motion maker and our second.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is to approve the minutes from June 6th with an amendment that the vote on the Housing Action Plan will show a vote of 5-0 with 1 abstention. Is there anyone who would be voting against that motion? I will ask a second time. Is there anyone who would be voting against that motion? Hearing none, the minutes are approved as amended with unanimous consent. Thank you, Dave, and thank you for bringing that to our attention. Moving down the agenda, we have a discussion on the comprehensive plan periodic update. And I believe, is this yours, Nick?
Yeah, I'll introduce our
Okay.
guests tonight. So on the agenda tonight is the 2024 comprehensive plan update, and we've got a couple of topics to cover this evening. We have Alex Campbell from AHBL and Andrew Oliver from Leland Consulting Group. They're our consultants that have been hired to assist the city with the comprehensive plan update. And I believe Andrew is going to go first. He's going to give you an overview of the existing conditions report that was in your packet. That is kind of the baseline information that we're using to inform the comprehensive plan update. And you'll remember Andrew because he worked on the housing action plan. And so he is picking up where that project left off. And then after Andrew, I believe Alex is going to start talking about our public outreach efforts.
Thanks, Nick. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Cool. It's nice to see everyone again. Andrew Oliver here. As Nick said, I was working with makers on the housing action plan, and glad to be back working on a comprehensive plan. I'm going to share my screen and just give an update on 2 topics: the existing conditions report and some changes to sub-area boundaries, which are both part of this process. I would also just quickly mention that, as you probably noticed from your packet, a lot of the baseline information in the existing conditions report is sort of picking up where the housing action plan left off. But the sort of overarching changes that I wanted to just call to your attention that are different between the 2 are most importantly that this has all been updated with the 2021 American Community Survey from the Census Bureau, which is 1 year more recent than the data that was in the Housing Action Plan existing conditions report, which was from last year, which was 2020 ACS data. And we've also got some more up-to-date real estate data in here as well. And it's a bit of a broader look. So we took into consideration the process we went through with you all for the Housing Action Plan, and made sure to include a more comprehensive look at demographics across different areas of Port Orchard and different breakdowns of residents of Port Orchard to get a more full picture of the community for the comprehensive plan. I'm just going to run through some highlights and findings. This is a map of the current city boundaries and UGA. This is the most recent zoning map. There's a couple minor changes since the existing conditions of the Housing Action Plan, which you're aware of. So on the population front, the latest population numbers have come out now from OFM, the state agency, 17,480. And we also have been discussing a little bit with Nick and with PSRC about the jail, which currently, according to the state, has 694 inmates, and we're trying to figure out the best way to deal with those numbers in the future population allocations. This is pretty similar to what you've seen before. The population of Port Orchard, as we know, is growing very rapidly, much more rapidly than the county and state, especially in the past 2 decades. This map shows population density by census block group, which is the sort of smallest geography that we can get really good data at with a low margin of error. Nothing that's particularly surprising. I would suspect there's obviously lower densities in McCormick Woods, higher densities along Sydney and Bethel, and where we have more apartment development in the city. But it's interesting to see just how the sort of density of housing is distributed across the city. The data on age here, we've updated for another year. So the first column on the left is the age breakdown in 2010, and the second column is in 2021. The city is still much younger population than the county and the state, especially much younger than Kitsap County overall. It is getting the population is aging slightly, as we can see over the past decade. The proportion of residents over 65 has increased a small amount. And there's a large increase of residents here in the 35 to 44, a relatively large age group. And Port Orchard is about 2/3 white. This is pretty similar to the 2020 data, a large share of Hispanic and Latino residents. It's more diverse than the county as a whole. This is a map, again, showing the breakdown of race and ethnicity by census block group. This shows the percentage of a BIPOC population, that's Black, Indigenous, people of color, by census block group. So we have quite varying rates of diversity across the city, ranging from around 10% in some areas up to 40% here in the Bethel-Sedgwick area. Final demographic point here, the educational attainment, it's a little fewer percentage of college educated residents in Port Orchard than the county and state, but overall pretty similar. Looking at households, I tried for quite a while to put this in some sort of nice graphic form, but I eventually gave up and just presented you with the whole table because it's a little bit complicated to show in chart form. But this shows a pretty detailed breakdown of Port Orchard's household types following our conversations about this in the spring and comparing with the county. So you can see the main categories here are couple households, which is 63% of the households in Port Orchard. Male householders comprise 15%, female householders comprise 22%. And here we have that breakdown we discussed before of single parents who are men and single parents who are women, and also a total breakdown of households with children, which is 40%. This one is especially interesting, I think, because it's quite a bit, 10 percentage points higher than the county. So there's a lot of young people and children in Port Orchard, as we saw before as well, and this shows that on a household level. Oh, and I'll just point out here in the text on the left, the average household size is 2.56. There's been some confusion about this because the census reported slightly different data on household size than OFM, but this is the latest OFM number from the state. So it's a similar household size to the state and county. This one, I believe you've seen before in the Housing Action Plan, just comparing the household size with housing stock. There's a lot more larger housing units than larger households in the city. And we talked about this a lot in the context of providing more housing options for people who may prefer smaller units or may only be able to afford smaller units. This is also stuff we've talked about a lot, so I won't go over it in great detail. 40% of Port Orchard residents are renters. This is a higher percentage of renters than the county. This is a breakdown of renters and owners by household size. So it gives a little bit of a different picture of who are the renters in Port Orchard. You see that the largest households are mostly homeowners here in blue, and smaller households are more evenly split between owners and renters. Looking at incomes, Port Orchard's incomes are lagging a little bit behind the county and the state, and the 2021 numbers confirm this sort of similar trend that incomes have increased a fair amount since 2020, but then again, so have county and state incomes. And this is the latest distribution of the city in blue and the county in green, incomes by lowest to highest income along the bottom axis here. So you can see Port Orchard, as we probably aware, it has a lot of sort of middle income residents, middle and upper income residents, but a fewer higher income residents than the county, and a higher share of extremely low income residents. And This chart shows something else we talked about during the HAP. The income has have risen a lot in the past decade. This now goes, actually it's 11 years, goes from 2010 to 2021 with the latest data. But incomes have risen the most for ownership households, 58% increase, whereas renter households have only seen a 28% increase over the past decade. And this map again shows by census block group the distribution of median income. This is an average, so it doesn't obviously represent every household in every area, but overall, it gives a picture of where wealth and poverty are relatively concentrated in the city. We have a pretty broad range here, median incomes ranging from $30,000 and $40,000 up to above $90,000 in the darker areas. This is some new information that we've been looking at. Because there's so much housing being built, the data is changing very fast. So we've got some census data here on the left, which shows vacancy rates. We've shown you this before. Vacancy rates have been dropping over the past decade or so. But in the past couple of years, and this source is actually incorrect. This is from CoStar, a commercial real estate database on the right, showing how incomes have really, how vacancy rates have really increased since 2021, which is good news for housing availability and affordability, because the large amount of apartment construction is starting to have an effect that we can really see in the vacancy rate data here, which is a positive sign in the past couple of years. This is the same, this is a similar breakdown of housing units by type, which we saw earlier. And here we have the relative age of housing in Port Orchard compared to the county. And this again just shows just how much housing has been built recently compared to the broader region. The most recent housing here is at the top in the darker bars, and you can see how much larger these are than the share of more recent housing built county-wide. And this is a couple of things to show the housing production trends that I was just mentioning. In the past couple of years, permit activity has continued to rise, both for single family houses and for multifamily apartments. Here in orange, single family are in yellow. This is the latest city permit data, which we were provided for this plan. It's a little bit more updated than what we saw in the HAP as far as when some of these developments might be expected to occur. And there's also a sort of increase in some middle housing types. These dark blue ones are sort of larger developments, including that McCormick Village that includes some ADUs and townhomes, as well as single family homes in the same development. And then we also have some fourplexes here showing up in the permitting data as well. So there's an increasing diversity of housing type and some mixed use development in the pipeline. Overall, over 5,000 units, which is pretty remarkable. This shows where a lot of that is taking place. The small diamonds are single family homes. The darker ones are built more recently in the past 5 years, and the lighter ones are a little less recent. So we see all this development happening in McCormick Woods. Also these subdivisions here around Bethel and Sedgwick. And then the orange dots are new multifamily apartment construction. These ones with dots around them are proposed or under construction currently, and the ones with a solid border were built in the past 5 years. So we can see the apartment construction is kind of more dispersed around the city. This shows the rent side of the same equation that we were talking about. Census data here showing incomes, home values, and rents. This is the chart we've seen before in the Housing Action Plan as well, with 1 more year's worth of data. And I think the most interesting thing, I guess, in the past year is that past year of data is that the home values have really continued to shoot up until 2021. But again, in rent data, we see something like in the vacancy rates that now that a lot of these new apartments are coming online, the rents are starting to stabilize because there's more supply of apartments in the city. So rents have actually gone down about $100 since last year on average. This is the same chart from the Housing Action Plan we've seen before, comparing ownership prices of housing and the income that you would need to afford those houses. This chart on the right, I think, is a little more instructive because it allows you to compare those various incomes. And as we saw before, the incomes are spread quite a bit across residents of Port Orchard, so we can compare different income levels to the housing that those incomes could afford to buy, households earning those incomes could afford to buy. But the basic picture is still that median income is not sufficient to buy the median sales price in the city. And finally, on cost burden, this data is a little bit lagging because the data set that the HUD department of the federal government puts out on cost burden takes them several years to compile. So this is the latest data from 2019. This may be updated during the course of this plan, but I'm not entirely sure when the 2020 will come out. But nonetheless, it shows that households who are earning lower incomes here, under 30% of AMI, are the most likely to be spending, over 30 or 50% of their income on rent, 50% in red, 30% in blue. And we also broke it down by tenure just to look at the way that that renters are generally seeing higher levels of housing costs, or a higher percentage of their income being spent on housing than homeowners here on the bottom. Finally, a couple quick slides on the economy. The latest Puget Sound Regional Council data on employment has come out now with 2022 data, so we can sort of start to see a rebound from post-pandemic, especially in the service industry, which is of course the largest sector in Port Orchard. So that's some good news on the economic front. Retail has not declined significantly more, but still down from before the pandemic. There's a little uptick in education jobs, but overall the picture is similar. Services, retail, and government jobs are the highest job sectors in the city. We've been getting some more data from the Navy. Again, it's a little difficult to get that data. The shipyard employs about 14,000 people in general. The best census data we can figure is that about 650 residents are employed by the military. And again, as we talked about in the Housing Action Plan, some of these are enlisted personnel of the Navy also gets a housing stipend. So some of the income data can also be skewed by that housing stipend. But we'll still work on getting better data from the Navy. This is the latest commuting data. Again, it's old. It's from 2020. This is another data set that's quite slow to be updated. Hopefully, we'll get some more recent data soon post-pandemic. But the general picture is probably relatively unchanged. A higher share of people commuting in than commuting out. A small number of people both living and working in Port Orchard. And we've also started to look into work from home trends. Trying to do some analysis of what percentage of people may be working from home based on the the industry breakdown in the city. So about 25% of workdays nationally are being worked from home. And when we look at where population might go and where jobs might go in the city as part of this comprehensive plan later on, we'll be looking a little more into that. This shows where new commercial development has occurred. There's much less than commercial development in the city than residential development, but there has been some things built recently, some small industrial at Dutch Brothers, and then some things are in the pipeline, including the community center, the redevelopment in the bank site, and some retail in this new McCormick Village area. And finally, 2 slides on targets. As we know, these targets come down from the OFM and then are allocated to cities by the county. The population target for Port Orchard here is shown in the light blue dashed line, 26,087. The current rate of population growth has been fast, as we know. And if that were to continue throughout the whole planning horizon, we may even expect the city to meet or potentially slightly exceed that target. That just shows that if the current trends continue, the estimation of where the city will end up and what we're planning for in this plan is pretty close to what we've seen historically in the past decade. For jobs, the picture is slightly different. Job growth averaged over the past decade would be expected to not quite reach the employment allocation target, but things may change economically over time, and of course in this process we have to plan for this level of job growth, 13,962 jobs by 2044. But, you know, it's not a massive gap and it doesn't really imply that we would, you know, that the city wouldn't reach that target in that time. So that's what I have on demographics. Sorry if it's a little lengthy. If you have any questions or comments or feedback, I'd be happy to discuss. And then I've just got a quick update on the sub area boundaries.
Great job. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And I truly appreciated carrying forward in this report to some of the suggestions we had in the last, when we did the housing action plan, in that there were several instances where you reference percentages and then also put the actual numbers in. And I also appreciated you looking at the city as a whole with your graphics. I appreciated that. So thank you for the time you took to do that for us.
Absolutely. I'm glad that we could incorporate that into this one as well. Okay, I'm going to share a couple more slides, not nearly as many this time. On the somewhat more dry topic of sub-area boundaries, this is mostly relating to countywide growth centers. So centers are the hallmark of Vision 2050, the PSRC's regional transportation plan, and the regional growth strategy is designed around these centers of growth, which guide growth allocations, advanced planning, inform transit service, and represent priority areas for federal transportation funding. Within Kitsap County, there's designated countywide growth centers. These receive higher priority in decisions relating to resource allocation, and the countywide planning policies identify that these centers identification and changes should take place during the comp plan update. Currently, downtown Port Orchard is the only countywide growth center in Port Orchard, and the other sub areas which we're going to be discussing now, Ruby Creek, Mile Hill, and Sedgwick Bethel, are currently candidate countywide growth centers. So this is the PSRC Regional Centers Framework Update document I have read far too many times. It sets out the criteria for these types of centers, and it's a little bit complicated, but basically the idea is that there are locations for compact mixed-use development, and they use a metric called activity units to measure density of development in centers. An activity unit is defined as one person or one job. So you add up all the residents of the center and all the jobs in the center, and you get your total number of activity units for the center. And you have to plan for a certain number of activity units, density of activity units per acre, 10 activity units per acre in order to be a countywide growth center. And in addition to that density, you have to show that 20% of those activity units are people and 20% of those activity units are jobs at a minimum, has to 20% of each. And finally, you have to show planning for additional growth. For countywide growth centers, the amount of additional growth is not quantified, but PSRC does want to see that you have land capacity for more growth and development within the centers. The center also should support multimodal transportation, including transit, pedestrian and bike infrastructure, walkable streets, and a size of between 160 and 500 acres total. So this map shows the current sub-area boundaries of 4 of these candidate CGCs that we were looking at as part of this process, 2 in Mile Hill, Lower Mile Hill, and Upper Mile Hill, and then 2 along Bethel, Bethel Lund, and Sedgwick Bethel. And I'll now show you where we've gotten to with the draft new boundaries. These proposed boundaries are shown here in red. The old boundaries are shown in orange on the left. So we've expanded the boundaries of the sub areas based on a number of things, which I'll discuss in a moment, but basically to take into account new development that's already happened in these areas, the potential for more new development and densification in these areas, and also to meet the size criteria for countywide growth centers. All 4 of these sub areas were in their existing boundaries too small for the size minimum. On the left, you just see the new boundaries. On the right, you can see the housing units, which are in shades of blue, and jobs, which are represented by these little boxes in the sub areas. And this is to show that we've attempted to draw these boundaries to encompass more newer housing units, which are either recently built or under construction up here in the north, and also in the west of the Sedgwick Bethel area, and these new subdivisions here. And some jobs, these jobs are sort of randomized by the census. So it's not exactly there's 400 jobs on this parcel, but in this general vicinity, there's 400 jobs or so. So we've tried to encompass the densest employment and residential areas in these. And in Mile Hill, in order to reach that size minimum, it was necessary to combine both Lower and Upper Mile Hill into one sub area. And we also included this neighborhood in the UGA to increase the residential share. But this was a little tricky because of the green belt here and things. So it's a slightly weird boundary, but again, it encompasses a lot of the new apartment development going on here inside the city and in the UGA, and also up here on this hill, and some employment along the corridor here and around in this area. So these boundaries are based on, as you saw, areas of recent forthcoming development, areas zoned for future densification. We didn't include any sort of the green belt or areas of very low density that we don't think are going to change. Parcels identified as vacant and underutilized in Port Orchard's recent land capacity analysis were included to show that potential for future growth, excluding critical areas such as wetlands, and staff input on where they've heard from developers that things might be taking place. As I mentioned, Mile Hill was consolidated into one larger sub area. And this shows now the size of these new boundaries. Sedgwick Bethel increased from 140 to 256, Bethel Lund from 113 to 170, and Mile Hill both together were 119, and now it's 223. So as you can see, none of them previously met the criteria of 160, and now they all three meet the minimum criteria of 160. And finally, this shows the totals of activity units. I will send this along if you wish to review it more carefully, but I also want to put a caveat on this and just say that we are awaiting more official counts, especially of employment in these areas from PSRC's database of parcel information, and that is going to take potentially up to another week or maybe two, depending on when they get it to us. But we'll send that along, an updated version of this when we get that. But our preliminary analysis indicates that most of these sub areas, with the possible exception of Bethel Lund, currently would meet the 10 activity unit per acre requirement for countywide to become countywide centers, which again is mostly tied to federal transportation funding. So I realize that's quite technical, and I'm happy to send the slides along so you can look at it at your leisure. But if anyone has questions, feel free. And otherwise, I'll pass it on to Alex. Cool, thanks. And I also just mentioned, and Alex can talk about this too, that these new boundaries are going in the public engagement that AHBL is working on now as part of the plan onto the social pinpoint site. So there will be some opportunities for the public to have a look at these boundaries as well as part of the comp plan process.
Does anyone have any questions or comments? With that, Nick, I can't remember who was going. Alex, was he going to speak about the public participation plan?
Yeah, he's looks like he's ready to go.
Okay. Alex,
Thanks,
go right
everybody.
ahead.
Well, great. Thank you. Much appreciated. Appreciate Andrew, all the work that him and Leland have done on the existing conditions. A couple items that I would like to highlight on our public engagement piece, in particular with the work that Andrew has done, is really there's almost kind of two major phases to the way that we're approaching the comprehensive plan. The first is kind of this visioning and initial existing conditions report, which is what Andrew presented tonight. That gives us really a good baseline of where the city is today, what has changed since the previous comprehensive plan was adopted, and informs public's decisions moving forward. So that document really is a key part of our overall comprehensive plan update. With that being said, Andrew also referenced a couple of our social engagement pieces of our comprehensive plan. And I'm going to go ahead and screen share our web page right now and give it a little bit more context of really the engagement that we're looking for in this process. So the background of our engagement so far, and this website is our public engagement website. It's a social pinpoint platform that we're utilizing to collect public input. And this platform provides not only us, but the city a great way to analyze a lot of that input that we receive as well, and really understand trends that we hear from the public, a number of people that do engage with the process, so we understand if our engagement approach is effective. It allows us to make more effective decisions as the update process continues moving forward. So the intention of this website is really an extension of our first public engagement opportunity that the city hosted at the end of January of this year. And that meeting was our kickoff and visioning meeting is what that was called. And some major pieces that we wanted to highlight in that meeting or get feedback from the community on included how is the city doing in upholding the adopted comprehensive plan, particularly the target statements, which are 14 directed statements that the community adopted for guiding the development of the city through the course of the comprehensive plan lifespan. Secondarily, we wanted to look at the sub-area planning efforts that Andrew mentioned and illustrated really well just a few minutes ago. And then thirdly, we wanted to give the public a general opportunity to provide feedback on the city's transportation network as a whole. And the social pinpoint platform that you guys are seeing here is a great way to do that. And I'll just kind of walk you through what this website looks like, kind of reiterate what we're looking to hear from not only the public, but elected officials as well. So feel free to participate. And that'll help guide us in these next steps. So again, this website as a whole, really we pushed it out to be live on Friday with the help of city kind of marketing campaign through the social media. And also I think we have some printed flyers that we plan on doing, as well as engaging at farmers markets on the weekends. Really, we're looking at for a lot of ways to let people know that this survey is live and active and encourage participation. Again, the key, the key intention of this process is to recreate the January meeting that we had. We want to provide equal engagement opportunities for the members of the public that showed up to the January meeting in a similar format as this online platform. So really a lot of the questions that you'll see here are going to be replicated for that in-person meeting. And that's done intentionally. If you attended the in-person meeting, all this information is going to look very similar to the physical boards that we produce. And just kind of to walk through step by step, again, we had the in-person meeting on January 31st. In association with that meeting, we prepared just a general presentation that outlined why are we updating the comprehensive plan process? What does that entail? How does the public get involved? How is the public's input meaningful? And what does the process look like, since it is a 2-year lifespan of the process update? So in order to provide the public more information to that end, at least through the website platform, we did provide a link to the PDF presentation itself, and also a recording of our in-person meeting in case people wanted to hear the information presented to them or get a better idea of people that are the first of 3 major engagement opportunities is this target statement section. And if my internet streaming comes in and out, feel free to flag me down and let me know, and I can pause for a second and let it catch up. But the target statements, really what that looks like, it's a sliding scale, 1 to 10, poor to great range, of the 14 target statements that were included in the city's existing adopted comprehensive plan. So all of these target statements identified here, 1 through 14, are copied verbatim from the plan. And really, we wanted to provide the community with a sliding scale to provide input on how they think the city is doing in achieving these targets. And really, I'll close that page. Really, the major emphasis of the target statement engagement is as we move forward with our land use strategies workshops, which will be a public workshop, and our overall comprehensive plan public engagement. One of the key pieces that we want to confirm is the city meeting the public's expectation for what these target statements had envisioned moving forward? How are we doing? How can we refine what we're currently doing to get back on track? Or where are we doing things maybe really well that we hear from the public that maybe we can focus our efforts elsewhere? So really, this is just a good way for the public to provide input on kind of the most important 14 statements. Again, the comprehensive plan is a large document that encompasses a lot of different areas of planning, public works, future growth, a lot of different moving parts to it. But these 14 target statements really are the summary of all of that information that shows the community desire moving forward. So checking in on how we're doing on those statements, I think, is going to be important to help us establish the next steps of the comprehensive plan update. Transitioning outside of the target statements, the sub-area planning engagement activities are focused around 2 particular areas in the Bethel corridor, and those would be Bethel Lund, which will be the first sub-area that we'll look at. And this engagement platform allows any users to actually pull up a map and drop in pins. You can add a marker. For example, if you have specific comments, I really enjoy that Walmart is in the community, for example, a hypothetical, you can add a pin here and type custom text that says, I really enjoy Walmart in the community. I think they provide a shopping service that we need, or I don't like Walmart in the community. I don't think it provides a service that we need. So the comments are open-ended intentionally. So that way we can hear more candid feedback from the community as they engage with the process. And what this map also allows us to do is provide a specific boundary that reflects the sub-area boundaries that Andrew just walked us through. The Bethel Sedgwick engagement opportunity is very similar. Both of these sub-area plans also provide a little bit more directed question opportunities. So not only is it this open-ended map where you can provide open-ended input, but we also ask specific questions. What types of land uses and building types would you like to see in the sub-area? And this is going to help drive us in additional public engagement opportunities for the sub-areas in the future. So that way we almost get a snapshot of land use preferences from the public before we really dive too deep on what these land uses should be. And the intention there is to reflect the public's desires and perceptions for the sub-area for the most appropriate land use types in the area. Additionally, we asked some specific questions. And again, these questions are common between both of the sub-area engagement opportunities. But the key questions are, what other cities or neighborhoods should we look for inspiration for these sub-areas? How are these sub-areas different than other parts of Port Orchard itself? What's kind of unique about them, whether that's geographically or the mix of land uses that are there today, or the transportation network that currently exists in the area? What elements of other Port Orchard neighborhoods should be incorporated into these sub-areas? What does the public see that works really well that they want to see continue to happen? And is there anything else, kind of an open-ended question, is there anything else that you'd like us to know specifically about this sub-area? And this is a great opportunity for example, some of the public comments that we heard even this evening regarding retaining significant trees in a community. This is a great opportunity for members of the public to identify those types of considerations so that we can at least address or consider them as early in the planning process as possible. And that's our sub-area piece. And our other major kind of focus, at least for this phase of the public engagement, is the transportation planning piece. And similar to our sub-areas, when we click on this engagement opportunity, it's going to open a map of the community as a whole. We actually have some engagement on here already, which is great because I can show you what this looks like to interact with what other people are saying on the platform. So these markers on the transportation map are categorized by different types of transportation, whether that's vehicular, pedestrian, accessibility, wide variety. And what you can do is you can actually click on some of the markers that other people on the platform have posted already. For example, someone has said that the city needs to pay more attention to Stetson Heights traffic in this area. And this allows users to add a marker in the exact location that they would like to see attention. So I think that also helps facilitate effective planning. So that way, whenever a public user of the website goes on, they don't have to try to describe an intersection or, hey, kind of in the middle of this road between these two intersections, and there's a little gray area of where exactly they're referencing. Here, you can actually zoom right to an area that you're particularly interested in, provide directed feedback to that location. One additional item I would like to highlight is we can also allow other public users to rate other comments. Not to say that these ratings will bump comments or pins higher up or lower down. It just allows members of the public to say, yeah, this comment is satisfying or I agree, or is unsatisfying and I disagree. And the reason that we think that's beneficial is that allows maybe some members of the public that don't necessarily feel like they want to provide specific comments about items. They don't want to drop their own marker and add their own text and submit it to a forum. But they can still go in and engage with other people's comments. For example, in this area, if a member of the public happens to agree, they can click the smiley face and it just gets added almost as a +1 behind the scenes. This doesn't live display because I think that limits some potential of toxicity on an online forum, which is always something that you have to consider. But this just gives us in the city some background analytics of what are people agreeing with or what are they disagreeing with. And this allows more members of the public to engage with this platform. And that's the transportation piece. And that's really kind of what we have so far. As I mentioned, the city has just gone live in promoting this online engagement platform. So it'd be great. You guys are more than welcome to hop onto that platform. Let us know what you think. None of the items are mandatory, so you can almost drop in, drop out for pieces that you feel particularly interested in or qualified to speak to, or if you're not sure about something, you're not obligated to respond either. To kind of back it up to a larger picture, again, this is our first real large public outreach opportunity coming from the Kickoff Envisioning meeting that we held in January. Using the information that we get here and the existing conditions that Andrew and Leland have put together, that's really going to start our kind of meat and potatoes of our comprehensive plan update, where we start to look at some of the land uses and policy language in there. And included in that work is subsequent public engagement opportunities. So I just wanted to give a brief overview of kind of what we just went public with last week and are hoping to get some additional feedback from the city and its residents and use that prospectively into the comprehensive plan update. So I'm happy to answer any questions either on the platform or the process at large. And thank you guys for the opportunity.
Does anyone have any questions or comments? I'm glad to see Andrew still here because I have, and first of all, I'm going to apologize because I don't remember seeing it, but it may be there. When you talked about our sub-area plans and you've consolidated the lower and upper Mile Hill, and then you've changed the boundaries at Bethel Lund and Bethel Sedgwick. Do you have on a map somewhere our already developed sub-area plans with the boundaries such as our Ruby Creek plan and our downtown sub-area plan? And I believe we have a sub-area plan for McCormick Woods too. Do we have those boundaries on a map anywhere? Just so that when we go to look at these, we understand where these centers are.
Yeah, I have those boundaries. I could put a map of the new boundaries of these sub areas alongside the existing ones and send that along, no problem.
Thank you. Does anyone have any additional questions or comments for Andrew or Alex?
Nice job also, Alex. Thank you.
Yeah, that looks like a very good platform to start. Younger people will probably, and we do have a younger population, will probably enjoy using that a lot. So thank you. We do appreciate both your attendance this evening and the time you've given to this. And with that, we will move down to our next agenda item, which is the transportation improvement plan in the comprehensive plan. Are you, oh, Jim is taking that, okay.
Trying to get my camera to turn on. Jim Fisk, Senior Planner for the City of Port Orchard. This evening, I passed out a revised tip to you here in the chambers. I also emailed that to those attending remotely. So the version in your packet is not the most current. However, we do anticipate additional revisions prior to a hearing next month. The staff report summarizes the changes to the tip. It has to do with the availability of funding, the design, construction, other priorities. So things have been moved around in the tip and funding updated. Some things have been moved to tier 2 and some into tier 1, and there's been a removal of some items because the city has completed it. This is a comprehensive plan amendment, 2023 comprehensive plan amendment. We did go through this process earlier this year for Meeline Road, but the code and state law allows a city to amend its comprehensive plan, provided it's done in conjunction with updating the city budget. That's where we are right now this year. So this tip is to be reflective of that. And so we'd like to introduce it to the commission and then schedule a public hearing at next month's meeting.
And real quickly, I wanted to clarify too that it will likely be a hearing at next month's meeting. We're still waiting for some information to come from finance, and there's some one of the projects on the tip, the Bethel Phase 1 project. We have some design decisions that we need to make that will influence what the final numbers in the tip look like, and so we're just waiting to answer those questions and figure out what the budget amendment will be so that the tip and the budget match.
Thank you. Just for the benefit of our planning commission members, I'm not sure how familiar you are with the tip and the 2 tiers. But just for myself, just to give you some information on it, our tier 1 projects in the tip are reasonably constrained, and they are meaning that we have some kind of an idea where we're going to get the money for it. And they are projects that we anticipate completing within the next 6 years. Our second tier, the tier 2, are I don't want to call them wish lists because they are all very important projects, but we don't anticipate getting to them until 6 years from now. However, they can move up to tier 1, and we are not sure yet where the funding sources for those particular projects will come from. That's why they're tier 2. Tier 1 are projects that we hope that we can complete and pay for in the next 6 years. So
how do you know which is which?
Well, at the top, it says tier 1.
I don't have my glass.
Oh, she doesn't.
Remember, I'm
The first 3 pages are tier 1.
Okay.
And the last 6 are tier 2s.
Okay. And then why are some highlighted yellow and red and
Those
green?
are the ones that are changing.
Okay.
The rest of them are as they are in the comprehensive plan right now.
Okay.
And the ones that he's highlighted are the ones that are referenced here.
Thank you.
My only question is, when is Ramsey Road going to move from tier 1 to from tier 2 to tier 1? Because that's a real important transportation element as we do Bethel, because I can see Ramsey Road as being an alternative for residents from Bethel.
Well, it's funny you should mention that. That is exactly the reason that we don't have the final version tonight. And that is because we're evaluating alternatives for how Bethel Phase 1 is going to be constructed. And there's a couple of variables, and the council is going to get a presentation next week from the city's consultant. And I don't know how long it will take for the city council to provide direction on which alternative they're going to pursue. But we will adjust the cost and potentially move projects from tier 2 into tier 1, depending on what the outcome of these discussions is.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments or questions from the commissioners? Okay, as I understand it, we will tentatively schedule a hearing for next month, depending upon action from city council on what the final amendments to the tip will be for this comprehensive plan update. And I believe, let me find my agenda again. Oh, temporary signage. That is Mr. Fisk again.
Actually, I think that one falls to me.
Oh.
The presentation that is in your packet is, as you recall, in the second or the end of 2022, we brought this discussion forward to the Planning Commission, and we let you know that we discussed what are the options for regulating temporary signs, and we were advised that we need to spend some time documenting the extent of the problem and looking at safety considerations. And so for the last 9 months, we have been doing photo documentation at intersections scattered throughout the city. And so your packet includes a presentation that shows the location of where various photos have been taken approximately, and then has photos of all the temporary signs and the time of year when they have been observed. Our big takeaway, even prior to heading into election season, is that this is a daylight problem, where when days are longer, we have a lot more signs, and in the winter, they mostly go away, although there still are signs all year round. And so we now feel like we have enough of a record to start the process of moving forward on doing something with temporary signs, if that is the desire of the Planning Commission. We are working with the police department. We're also asking the police to put together some accident data in the locations where these signs have been most frequently observed, to see if there's any sort of potential correlation between accidents and temporary signage. And we are evaluating a couple of different strategies that we may be able to use if the Planning Commission feels that this is something that we should proceed with. I will tell you that the City Council has been asking about this issue for the last month or two, and they're getting complaints from the public about these signs. And I think most of the complaints are coming probably from a more aesthetic concern rather than a safety concern. And it's very important that we focus on the safety aspects of these signs. And one of the safety aspects we're concerned about is that there are many areas in the right of way that don't have a safe place for people to walk to physically install a sign. And so in those areas where either there's no place for you to park your car and you are getting out of a vehicle to put a sign in the ground from the shoulder, or potentially blocking or partially blocking traffic, that is a potential safety concern that can be used to justify some limitation on temporary signs in the right of way. Likewise, if in an intersection or in a place where signs might be a distraction, that is another area where we could look at safety concerns to potentially limit signage. The other alternative that has been discussed is the possibility of introducing a permit process for commercial temporary signs that would differ from more protected forms of speech, like political or religious type speech. And so there may be an opportunity for us to provide a code that would require permitting for the commercial signs, and that would not do anything about the political signs, but it would address the commercial signs. So right now, we wanted to bring this to your attention, let you discuss it, and share any concerns that you have about safety or other considerations related to what you see in the presentation. And we will continue this discussion. It's probably going to be a few meetings before we have some clear direction. We are also going to be talking to the city council at some point and getting their input, sort of working with both the council and the planning commission to get some direction on where the city should go on this.
Does the commission have any questions or comments on the temporary signs? Please.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like at some point last year, we did look at some potential draft verbiage for the code to regulate this. Because I distinctly remember areas that don't have a sidewalk. And I remember we talked a little bit about permitting. I would be very happy to see some sort of guideline along that.
Yeah, and I think we got the cart a little before the horse on introducing any code language, and it's pretty clear that we have to go through this process to really document the conditions to drive the policy. And so we've sort of put that policy aside, and we're really looking at what information we've gathered, and I hope to have that accident data in September to accompany the photo documentation so that we can start putting together the puzzle of how to address the problem.
Perfect. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments?
Dave does have his hand raised.
Oh, thank you. Dave?
Yes, I was going to say, I did recall us looking at some code language. I don't remember, did we look at other cities' codes and what they had done? And did they have to go through the same process to prove safety before they put their codes into place?
Well, I will say that looking at other cities' codes is not necessarily the best option here, because there were some major decisions on signage from the courts in the last decade, and many cities have not done anything to address those changes. And so they're potentially at risk of lawsuits for speech-related issues. There is specific case law that talks about cities sort of documenting their process and justifying a regulation of speech. And so we are following what law is available as we make new policies. We don't want to go forward and adopt something that is inconsistent with case law. There are not many cities that have addressed temporary signage post Reed versus Gilbert, which was the big case in 2014. There's been a number of other cases that subsequent to Reed have clarified what cities can and can't do with regard to signage, but there aren't a whole lot of cities that have tackled this yet.
Is there anyone else with questions or comments?
When you talk about temporary signs, is there like a time limit on that? Because I know the political signs and things of that are up just a certain amount of time, but when you look at some of these pictures, they're advertising like the new homes, which are up there a lot longer. Is there a time limit on how long a sign can be up?
So our code references the condition of the sign, and if the sign is falling apart or becomes unreadable, it can be removed. Also, some of the signs that are in the photos are, while they may be temporary in terms of their construction or materials, they don't meet the definition of temporary sign in our code, which is simply referring to the sign on a stake that you can push into the ground, or that might be on metal prongs that is pushed into the ground. And it has a very specific size limit. So anything that's bigger than, I think, is it 2x3, Jim? So just the political size signs, anything that is bigger than that is currently not allowed in the right of way. So you're supposed to be within that parameter of being the small sign on a stake to be considered a temporary sign at all. The other signs for A boards, there's a specific way to get an A board sign approved. And so some of those are permitted, some of those may not be. The real estate signs are a whole totally different animal, because they're often in concrete with 4x4s and are made of wood and printed. And it just those signs don't fall under the category of temporary. They're just plain not allowed. And so it's just something that we haven't been able to tackle as a code enforcement problem.
It does seem like they are allowed if we don't take them down.
Right.
Joe?
Well, I'd just like to say thanks to the planning department for their work on this and their diligence. I share, I think we probably have to do something about this. And it's probably our responsibility to do it at minimum for safety, as Director Bond notes. I will say that, for what it's worth, from my perspective as a planning commissioner, I think if we, trying to find the right way to say this, if we sort of let the aesthetics of our community go because of a very conservative approach to case law, that's probably something I would advise us to not do. And there are plenty of other communities that don't have this significant of a challenge. And we should be one of those communities because we take pride in our aesthetics.
Nick, is it possible for us to distinguish between commercial and non-commercial? I mean, I don't know. I'm remembering at one point, the rule was we could not look at content whatsoever.
I think that with commercial, there is room for more restriction, but probably not more than requiring a permit in order to put that type of sign up. But we're really still evaluating what we can and can't do. One approach to temporary signage that we've discussed is simply saying, if you can't, if there isn't a safe route to walk to physically install and remove the sign, it isn't allowed. You have to do it between the sidewalk and the curb in a landscape strip, and we would define that as the traditional public forum. That's one approach. As I mentioned, you could potentially try to require permits for the commercial versus non-commercial, but it's a difficult thing, and I think that all of the approaches have drawbacks in terms of the enforceability for our code enforcement officers who have to make calls in the field. If they pull up and see a sign somewhere, they have to be sure that it's in the right of way, number one. And so it's always a difficult thing when you're considering pulling a sign out of the right of way and making sure that you are certain that it is correct to remove the sign.
But I would agree with Commissioner Morrison in that I do believe that there must be something we could do to not let our city be tainted by the abundance of these signs. I'm also going to ask, I know that we passed something about those flag type signs, and I'm seeing more of them also. Is that just a code enforcement issue?
That is, if you can use the C-Click Fix app to report those, and that'll get to code enforcement. I did bring a few of those to the attention of code enforcement recently, and so they were supposed to be out talking to the property owners, and I'm not sure if that particular one has been followed up on yet or not, but definitely report it, and we will have code enforcement go find out who the owner is and get them taken down.
Thank you. Is there any other comments or questions by the commission? If not, we will move to our last agenda item, which I believe is the director's report.
All right, I had a couple of things I wanted to share tonight, and I'm not sure who is sharing the screen currently, but if you could stop sharing, I will share. The first thing I want to share is the Kitsap Bank project. I don't think I've shared this with all of you yet, but at our June, I believe it was 13th of June meeting, Kitsap Bank came and presented their concept drawings for the bank headquarters. The city council approved a development agreement with Kitsap Bank, and so I wanted to walk you through the project. As you know, we did a master plan downtown. The bank is currently located on the area that is Site 4. They're proposing a new building on the site that is listed as Site 3 on this map. And so the Site 4 is the site of our new community event center. This image is out of our downtown sub area plan. The site of the Kitsap Bank is at the corner of Frederick and Bay Street. You can see that they do have a very small area of a parking garage off of Frederick, and it actually, you enter from Frederick and exit out the back of the building to what will be a new, smaller parking lot behind the bank, because most of the area behind this site is going to end up being a public plaza. You can see that the bank lobby, there's an entry plaza at the corner of Frederick and Bay that's elevated slightly above the street with some outdoor seating. There's talk of putting in like a coffee kiosk or coffee shop in the lobby of the bank. And then you go into the retail lobby of the bank on the ground floor, and they have a variety of bike lockers, restrooms, and that sort of thing on the ground floor. And then it's a 3-story building with offices on the 2nd and 3rd floor. This is the entrance rendering, and for whatever reason, the scale of the trees is a little bit off from what I think it's actually going to be, but it will be, the materials largely represent what they're proposing to use, which is like a glue laminated timber material with also a fair, a decent amount of glass. This is the corner of where Orchard and Bay Street currently meet, which is also the kind of the center plaza between the Community Event Center and the Kitsap Bank building. This is that Frederick corner where you'd have the outdoor seating area, and potentially people could buy coffee and sit outside and enjoy their coffee on the street. On the back side of the building, you'll notice the foreground doesn't show anything because the city is just now designing this plaza, but the building has a ton of glass taking advantage of the views. It has some outdoor terraces where people can step out of their offices and go outside. And so this is the water facing side of the structure. And that's the extent of the renderings that I have at this time. So we're very excited to have entered into an agreement with the bank where they have applied for building permits. They've applied for shoreline permits. I would expect their shoreline permit will go to the hearing examiner sometime this fall, maybe October, November. And hopefully they will have a shoreline approval by the end of the year and can move forward with getting their building permits issued and hopefully going forward with construction.
So I have a question about Frederick Street.
Yep.
So it always is moving, like it has new humps in it and then they'll go away. And the only reason I know that is because I had a building or a place there. How do you fix that?
Well, Fred, we have a grant right now to rebuild Bay Street, and that design project will go around the side of the bank on Frederick. So the bank is part of the agreement. They paid a fee in lieu of construction. So rather than the bank building the frontage improvements, the city is going to add that leg of Frederick onto our Bay Street design. And so we'll build sidewalks and reconstruct the street there. There's also some contaminated soil in the street that'll have to be removed. And so the city is taking on the Frederick Street reconstruction as part of our Bay Street reconstruction.
Okay, thanks.
And how's that parking? Can you, a little more, is that multi-level parking?
No, it's a single level parking deck. And if you go back to the, you can see on the original concept plan here, the parking garage empties out behind the building. And then there's this marina parking lot, which will include probably timed parking, either 15 or 30-minute parking for people at the marina to load and unload, but also for users of the community event center and the plaza. Maybe some of the spots will have a 1 or a 2 hour restriction, while others will be a 15-minute load and unload. So there's spaces within the building, and then it circulates actually out the back and around to Frederick in a circle.
So where are the people that live on their boats? Where are they going to park?
So the city actually, we control the area that's in front of the marina, but we have for years had an agreement where we traded parking. The Port of Bremerton owns the commuter lot over by the park. We owned this area over by the marina. And so we had swapped parking lots. That agreement has been unwound now. So we're returning the parking lot to the marina. The boat users can unload here, but they will have to park down on the other side of Harrison where the commuters park.
Oh.
And then this has been returned to the city. And, in the near term, it's going to be used for mobilization for the sewer lift station project and for bank construction and all the construction that's going to be happening will be right in front of the marina here. And then long term, we will be putting in a plaza and then this surface parking lot that is shown.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
You happen to know the proposed square footage?
My memory is about, I think it was 36 or 40,000 square feet.
Thank you.
It's an expensive building. I think, so I'll move that. That's a good segue to our next presentation. But when we had a number of dignitaries visit Port Orchard a couple of weeks ago, actually Connor, my intern here, I had him throw together a presentation that just outlined all of the projects that we're doing in downtown, because there's so much money coming from the feds, from the state, and we wanted to make sure that the people who are coming and speaking just knew how much they were contributing to our city. And so the presentation, is everybody seeing the new one now? Yeah. So again, this is everything that's happening downtown. This is a more updated rendering of the bank and the community event center and plaza design, as well as the sewer lift station that we just opened bids on a couple of weeks ago, and that's going to be starting here in the next few weeks. So the slide deck here just has a whole bunch of projects, but I think the really impressive number is that when you take all the federal, private, state, and local investment, we've got $161 million in projects happening in our downtown over the next few years. A good portion of that is federal money, about 24 million, almost 25 million. We've got about 27 million in state money. The Public Facilities District is in for 18.5 million. Our local share, which some of this is bond proceeds from debt that we're incurring to rebuild City Hall, but we're putting in 24 million. And I have to move all of your faces on my screen so I can see the last number. The outside agencies, the library is committed 6.5 million for their share of the community event center building. So just real quickly, I know the Secretary of Transportation was here for the Marina Breakwater. They've got over $15 million in investment here, including a couple of different state grants that relate to electric ferry and charging infrastructure. The Bay Street reconstruction, as I mentioned, everything in yellow could be touched in this project, but the project is primarily reconstructing Bay Street, Frederick towards the water, the Port Street Plaza, but probably not Orchard and probably not around Robert Geiger or up the hill on Frederick, except possibly some utilities work that may be needed. So the APE area of potential effect is shown in yellow. We are interviewing consultants for this work. I think they have to have proposals in by this week or next week, and we'll be interviewing and hiring somebody for this design very soon. I'm sure you're all aware of the pedestrian pathway that we've been working on for years. We have over $8 million in investment for this project, including over 5 million in federal money to complete that project.
When is that going to be completed, or when do you think?
We had to redo some environmental documents for federal requirements, and so we're updating those, but I think the goal is still 2 years from now that we're going to be going to construction, but we got to get through our processes first. The next project you may not know about is we got money from the feds through PSRC for a Bay Street situational study. And basically we're looking at the Bay Street pedestrian pathway west to Port Orchard Boulevard, and then figuring out how to connect people up Port Orchard Boulevard to Tremont, where we have nice new sidewalks. And so I actually just saw some concepts for the first time today related to this project for how we're potentially going to design traffic or manage traffic and pedestrians and keep people safe. So we're actively working on that and should have a public presentation in the near future. I don't know if you're all aware, but City Hall is now going on, I think 30 years old. And so we have siding, window, roof, all kinds of issues that we have to take care of. And so we just went out to bid on a pretty major reskin project just to totally refresh the exterior of City Hall, repaint the inside, update some carpets, and just generally fix the building. That's about an $11 million project. I think you've all seen the community event center quite a few times by now. We are still on track for building that starting in 2026. Once the Kitsap Bank has moved into their new location, we can tear down the old building. The Orchard Street Plaza, I'm excited that the areas in green and blue are currently well underway in design, and we have just started the red area. We have a contract for that portion of the design project now. And our goal is that the red, the blue, and the green are all going to be bid together in 2026. It's probably an 18 to 24 month construction project. And by the time we're into 2028, this should be open to the public and complete.
Where is Orchard Street?
It's now a plaza. It's not going to be a road anymore.
I don't even know where the road is.
The
though.
one that goes into Kitsap's Driving.
Go where?
Between
Into
Frederick,
Kitsap Dri-
yeah,
Into Kitsap's Drive-In.
Oh.
And their parking lot.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know it had.
and it's Orchard Avenue, so that's probably why you didn't recognize it. I guess,
No, I've never
street.
even seen it.
And then another project, we just awarded the bid, as I mentioned, on the Marina Lift Station. So this is the first phase of all of this. You'll notice this building is elevated around the surroundings because we're raising everything for sea level rise. So there's a small building here, and the grass is going to be here temporarily until we complete the plaza. And there's a number of hatches and other things that'll be integrated into the plaza design. Also, the existing viewing platform, we're going to be sawing that off and creating a viewing platform that's at grade rather than up high. And the reason for that is that our existing facility was not ADA compliant, and it did not make sense to put in an elevator into that old structure. So we're just sawing it off and bringing it down to grade. Another grant that we got was the port received a bunch of money to clean up a contaminated site here down next to the boat launch. And so once that cleanup is done, we may see some sort of redevelopment there. We're not sure what the port has planned. I don't think the port knows what they have planned for that yet beyond this initial cleanup.
Is that to take those buildings down?
Yeah, I believe the buildings will have to come down. I think there's tanks underneath them that are leaking. And so those.
Is that like the sheet metal place?
Yep.
And the West Washington Center Arts, Western Washington.
Oh, okay.
We talked about Kitsap Bank already, and then I'm excited to report that there's an excavator down there, and they're going to start tearing down the Lighthouse Restaurant this week, I'm told. They may have started today even. But the 429 Bay Street project that was permitted a few years ago is finally going to break ground, and they're aiming to have foundations in this year and to go vertical through the winter. And hopefully, this is probably a year and a half to complete this project, but it'll be a nice bookend for our downtown, and it'll get some more people living close to downtown.
So who owns that?
So the guy's name is Ali Kashi, but
Is that the guy that owned Cheers? Is that
Yeah.
the same guy? Okay.
so anyway, so we hadn't taken the time. We've been so busy over the last few years. We hadn't taken the time to add up all the investment, and it's really pretty exciting how much is happening in Port Orchard. So that's I have one more announcement, and it's a very sad one, and that is that Josie came into my office on Friday and told me that she had been poached by another city and is leaving us. And I don't blame her, because she's 25 and she spends a lot of time in the Portland area, and she got an offer from Vancouver and doesn't have to drive here anymore. But Josie has been here, I guess, 2 years, I think, isn't this, between interns and assistant planner. And we are very sad to see her go.
When will you be leaving, Josie?
My last day will be August 25th.
That's not long.
No, it's and we are advertising for a new planner now, and Jackie is here tonight because she's going to help us staff planning commission meetings and do things with Zoom meetings and packets to get everything set up for you until we're staffed back up. And we're also losing Connor. This is I think your last week is next week, is that right? So Connor's been an intern all summer. He's put together like 4 or 5 different presentations for me, and he's really good at graphics, and I'm going to miss having his skills as well. So hopefully he'll when he graduates, he'll want to come back and apply for a job here.
Josie, we won't see you before you leave, but thank you very much for all you've done for the Planning Commission. It's been a pleasure working with you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure working with all of you as well. I will miss you very much.
And Jim reminded me of one other announcement. The Housing Action Plan was adopted by the council in June. So your work on that is now complete, and we've closed out that grant. And we're starting to work on code changes that are recommended from the Housing Action Plan. And it's not sure how long it'll be, being short-staffed before we get those things to you, but we are working on it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is there anything else for the commission this evening?
Actually, Nick, I had that dovetailed into a question. The beginning of the meeting, I was called in and was listening in, before I signed in on Zoom. But it sounded like most of the community conversation was focused around trees. And how does the significant tree code we have currently in place impact what they were talking about? And how will the housing action plan change that?
Well, first of all, I wanted to share my screen here. This is the tree in question on Taylor at Mitchell, just up the road from the high school. You can see the high school in the background here. So unfortunately, the challenge here is that the Taylor Street right of way, it serves a number of houses, and the lot here is proposed for development, and the city requires that you bring sidewalks into streets as things develop. And so that tree is in a bad spot unless we can find a way to go around the tree or move the road. But I'm not sure what can be done at this point. We haven't looked at it very closely yet, and we're waiting for the developer, as I mentioned, to clarify what they intend to do. As for our existing code, our code does allow for the removal of significant trees, but they have to be replaced at specified ratios. And the reason for that is sometimes there's just no way around a significant tree, but we try to incentivize their preservation as much as possible. In terms of the new code, there was a discussion of trees in the housing action plan, but the recommendations weren't as specific. It really said that you have to weigh the trade-off between protecting the environment and the benefits of trees with the costs of housing and the need to provide housing. And so it was suggested that we look at what we've done in the McCormick Village area in terms of going to a canopy approach where we're planning for tree canopy long-term. But we need to figure out how to incentivize the protection of large trees like this when you use the tree canopy approach, if we were going to go that route. But we've taken a couple stabs at trees, and it's hard to find consensus and come up with a system that works really well, that makes everyone happy. And so it's a really difficult conversation that I think we will get to as soon as we have a little bit more time to spend on that topic. But this is the redwood or sequoia that is at this corner, and they described it pretty well. It's got, I think, 2 or 3 different trunks that split at the base, and it's probably 80 or 100 years old.
Is there anything else for the commission this evening? Any comments anyone wants to make? Anything you want to share, or any more questions? Josie.
For those attending in the council chambers tonight, I passed these out and they are flyers to the Social Pinpoint website that was mentioned earlier. And for those attending remotely, it is available on our website as well.
Thank you. Is there anything else? Joe.
Great job by the department. Amazing work. Josie, good luck. That's it.
Yeah, I found the Nick's bringing us up to date on what's going on downtown to be particularly exciting. And it just shows the progress that we've made in the last few years, and how progress can happen when everybody rows the boat in the same direction. So with that, we will stand adjourned, and I believe we will have a meeting in September. Is that correct?
That's the plan, though. I believe it's going to be Jim and Jackie only. I have a conference to attend that week. So
okay. With that, we'll see everyone in September. Have a great August.